Hello everybody, welcome, thank you for tuning in to this week's Hobbytime at Healys video. What I'm going to be talking about today is hobby resolutions, how to set them, what you should do, and a few tips and a few lessons learned I had from mine last year. So, grab yourself a lovely cuppa, and let's dive on in. So before we get into hobby resolutions, let's address the elephant in the room. First off, what is going on behind me? Where is the desk? Well, we've had to repurpose the desk to give my partner a more permanent work from home station. There's no worries with that because we've also doubled it up to make a streaming station for us both. You can check out both of our Twitch streams in the links in the description. So that's already great because sucks for the minute while we wait for a new desk to arrive from myself, but it does give me more opportunity to utilise the space behind me, meaning I can hopefully do a little bit more with it rather than just filming and squeezing in a little bit of painting. Second to that, you're probably wondering what this is. Today I'm joined by our cute little fuzzy mascot, Milkshake the cat. He is currently fast asleep, so if he does make a real random noise, at least you're going to know what it is. So now we get on to hobby resolutions. They're always an interesting thing that come up this time of year, and I think, to be honest, for a lot of people, most people I know are kind of setting them late on in January this year, mainly because they didn't really know how the year was going to go, and of course for us here in the UK and most of the world as well, a third lockdown for us, or this third wave of coronavirus that's massively hit and taken a lot of people out, has taken up a lot of people's Januaries. So, when it comes to setting your hobby resolutions, there's a couple of things that you need to really take into consideration. For me, I think one of the most fundamental things you need to think about is time. And what I mean by this is, you may think, well hey, I've got a whole year ahead of me, this isn't going to be any problem whatsoever. I think you need to take a retroactive look at what you completed last year and think, can I realistically beat that? For example, one of your hobby goals could be to paint up around 3,000 points of one of your armies, let's say Stormcast Eternals. Whilst 3,000 points may seem achievable in 12 months, look at the actual miniature content of that army and also think about your paint and colour scheme. You may have a very simple colour scheme, which means that you can literally just spray, prime, wash and colour in some shoulder pads and you're very happy with that. That's great. If that's what you want to do, then that's probably very achievable for you. However, if you have a more complex colour scheme, or you just like to take time on your models and each miniature is going to take you around 1.5 hours to 3 hours, think about how much that totals up to overall with that many models in your army. You want to set yourself realistic time goals here, and I would suggest putting in a few stopgaps throughout the year just to kind of see where you're getting to. The last thing you want to do is be disappointed with your goals because you set yourself too much to do, and that can also be really damning and frustrating. You don't want to change what is supposed to be an enjoyable hobby into something which is a pressure point to get done, because that's one of the easiest ways to find yourself demotivated and losing interest in a project. One of the next things I'd urge you to consider as well and to think about before you set yourself your goal is a financial commitment. And what we mean by this is, if you were to set yourself a goal that you want to have a very large army painted by the end of the year or purchased or anything that you want to do, now think about realistically, can you afford it? Do you have to drop all that money all at once? Or is that a better idea to set it as a slow burn project? For example, if it's a brand new army you're looking to start to do, let's say Deathwatch, what's the goal here? Is it that you want to have 2,000 points of Deathwatch and you're going to go and drop and do that straight away? Or is it more realistic to set your goal for the first part of the year to be around to complete maybe a combat patrol box? And then maybe add 2 or 3 units to the army to bring it up to say 1,000 or 1,500 points. Setting these markers and thinking about it realistically in terms of finances as well are really, really important. Because again, this is all about keeping yourself motivated and these are goals that you want to try and achieve. So one of the things I want to say next is that not all of the things on your list need to be miniatures related. Now what I mean by this is, a lot of people's lists that I see is get X amount of points done, get this army finished, get that done, it's great that people have these goals, but also take into consideration, is there anything else around the hobby you would like to do? For example, last year, 2020, saw probably so few of us playing games compared to normal. One of my goals for this year is actually just get back up to speed with the game and get playing at a level that I was before. Think about it, you haven't picked up the books, looked realistically to go and roll some dice for quite some time. So really take into consideration stuff like that. This also comes into things like painting techniques. One of your hobby goals could be, I really want to try NMM, and get through that and test this scheme out. I really want to try wet blending. That's something that I wanted to be able to try and be more competent at the end of the year, or airbrushing. Things like these are all other hobby goals that you can focus on. Not everything has to be about finishing models, batch building, buying and doing things like that. There are a lot of other elements to this hobby. So think about what else it is you really want to do this year. For this next point, and this is basically, while it relates to hobby resolutions, I think it's a very good goal when it comes to looking at your hobby overall. Don't compare yourself to everybody else. I've already seen people's lists go up this year, which I've got way more on it than my own list has. And I kind of think, oh, am I not doing enough? That's not the right way to think about it. This is your hobby. And looking back at the points that we've just raised, you're going to be very aware of your time, your financial commitment, and any other things that you want to focus on this year. And that goes the other way too. If you see somebody else's list go up and realise it's far smaller than yours, don't think, oh no, I've put too much on my list. You are aware of your goals and how much time you can dedicate to them. The idea here is that we want to support each other and spur each other on to try and get these done. A few other things to do when you're prepping your hobby list is, first off, write it down. Put it in your phone, put it in your notes section, or write it down somewhere on your whiteboard if you have one near your hobby station, or even in a hobby journal or something. It's key to have these written down, even if you don't look at it for the rest of the year, but make sure it's somewhere where that towards the end of the year you can open it up and take a look and think, oh, what did I actually achieve? Because this can also be a roadmap for you throughout the year if you're struggling on what to do. If you ever find yourself in a hobby funk, taking a look back at goals that you set yourself earlier in the year is a great way to put you back into that mentality when you were super passionate about something. So make sure that you write it down and have it somewhere as a reference point. So let's get on to my own hobby resolution, shall we? So first off, one of my resolutions is actually to sort a better hobby station. And what I mean by this is that previously we had the big corner desk over here in the room, which was great for filming in terms of for these backward shots, but reality it wasn't the most comfortable for painting on. So what the plan is here is to actually use this opportunity where the desk is now being repurposed and focus on setting up a better hobby station, and whilst I'm doing it, have a bit of a clear out of stuff that has just kind of gathered. I personally have a very bad habit of letting things pile up on my desk and getting distracted by other models. So for me, it's going to be a really, really good project for me to make sure that I'm focusing on keeping my hobby station clean, setting up a better station, because ultimately you're going to looking to spend a lot of time there. And for me, if I want to sit there, my old hobby station really didn't give me that. So last year for my hobby list, as you saw in my previous video, is a lot of mine was set around painting up X amount of points of my armies. This year I'm taking a very different approach, and I'm going to categorise it as kits, or for my 40k armies especially, I'm going to do it as battlefield roles. So for one of my hobby goals this year is that for my Blood Angels, I want to make sure that I paint up at least one of my troop choices, one of my elite choices, and one other. And for this gives me a lot of creative freedom, because if any other kits or anything come out in the year that actually I'm like, oh, cool, brand new, Space Marine troop choice or brand new Space Marine heavy support that I don't have already, it gives me that freedom to basically get something, but it means that I'm adding fully painted stuff to my army. So for me, like I said, that's one troop, one elite, and one other added into my army. That pretty much carries on down to my Necrons, although my Necrons is slightly different. Because with my Necron army I have quite a lot already built and primed. My goal for my Necron army is at the moment it sits, so my goal last year was to put it up to 750 points. We've sat more around 1,000 fully painted now, which is fantastic. So for me it is finish my primed models. Now for my primed models, actually for my Necrons, there is only 4 kits that are primed, but one of those is a monolith that I want to spend quite a lot of time on doing. A couple of those are the Canapex Doomstalkers, so again quite big units in terms of actual miniatures. They're kind of tall. And my final ones are some infantries, so some converted death marks and a few immortals. While this isn't necessarily quite a lot for my Necrons, I am very aware that I do have quite a complex colour scheme for mine, using lots of whites, brasses and blues, so I know that it is quite time consuming. So again, this harkens back to looking at setting those realistic expectations. My final hobby goal for Warhammer 40,000, well, Warhammer 40,000 main game anyway, this is very important here. This is very COVID dependent, and this is to play a few games and get back up to a competent level of playing the game. I don't think really much has changed since I played, but realistically I only actually managed to get out about 3 or 4 games of 9th before everything happens. So you know, it's one of those making sure that I can actually have some games, get my head around it more, and also taking into consideration all the new FAQs. But by putting a little asterisk next to it and putting this down as COVID dependent, this may not be something I have an opportunity to do this year, although there are fantastic ways to do this digitally, and that's things such as Tabletop Simulator, where you can play online with your friends and do things like that. So maybe that's something I'll look into if this year doesn't go overly well. Now when we go into Age of Sigmar, one of my goals is for my Stormcast Eternals. Last year it was to get everything, or have a fully painted Stormcast Eternal army. It's not something I had time to do, although I did put out some units I was very, very proud of. And now I feel I've got the colour scheme nailed down. So, really simple goal for me, have all my battle line fully painted. A lot of that is Liberators and some Secretors, but I think that's a realistic goal for me to be able to do. It may involve a lot of batch painting, but it is what it is. But we're not focusing on having the entire army done. I think it gives me a lot more clarity to go, my battle line, need to get that done. Now, a few of the other goals that I have this year are to finish some of the boxed games that I've kind of half painted. And for this one, I've decided not to pick all of them because it would take me some time to get through them all, but would be to finish painting my Aeronautica Imperialis boxed game. So that could be something that I can pack up and take with me. If we end up in a position where the world starts opening up a little bit more, I'm sure one of the first things that will happen will be small groups meeting together. So the idea of being able to take a box with me, pop that down, make sure it's sanitized and clean of all these nice fully painted models, and play one-on-one with somebody, I think is very realistic and also kind of ties in with what I'm hoping to do throughout the year. Now, going into my last few hobby goals, these ones are broken up a little bit between skills I want to try and improve and also things I would like to do for both the channel here, Twitch, and a few other bits and bobs. So the first one is, and it's actually something I've already started to dabble in, and it is learn a new painting style. And for this I've decided to take up learning how to do cell shaded painting. It's always a style that I've kind of been interested in, that kind of Borderlands-esque comic style. It's something very different from anything I've painted before, and I think it's something that I really enjoy doing in terms of when I've started dabbling in it already in 2021, and I want to kind of keep going through that. But for that, I'm going to focus on having all of my Blood Bowl stuff and kind of side miniatures sort of painted up in that style. Who knows, maybe I'll get to a point where I do a full army for tabletop and that. There's only one way to find out, I guess. Talking along the line of improving skills, one of the ones I would like to do is improve my damage skills. What I mean by this is ways to apply damage to models to make them look a little bit more realistic, that they're in the midst of battle. A lot of my miniatures are very clean, very polished, although they have weathering on them, and I'm quite happy with how my weathering turns out. I'm looking to add battle damage to miniatures because it's not something I've ever looked at doing before, and I think this is a skill that at some point over the year I will find some time to be able to apply. So realistically, that's kind of it for personal goals. What's coming up next is goals for things like the channel. Last year, one of the things I really wanted to do was bring battle reports, and we talked again about it in the last video about how there was a battle report filmed and ready, but it just hasn't gone up because so much has changed, and I didn't want to just put one random battle report up. Again, this all depends on the way of the world, but if battle reports can get done, then fantastic. That's one of the things I want to bring to the channel. Another thing I'm looking to bring to the channel is a series of videos designed at brand new players, or returning players to the hobby. And these are just going over some basics, things that I wish somebody had told me when I first got into the hobby, and just help things that I think will help new players and that won't be quite so intimidating. Whether it's things understanding things like terminology, basic painting skills, or even just some basic list writing. A couple of bits and bobs that I would like to bring to the channel. So keep an eye out for those throughout 2021. And the final goal for the year for me is to basically, sounds a bit odd, keep doing what we're doing. Across all of our social medias we have here for the channel, we're really growing at a rate I'm very happy with. And I just want to kind of continue going on that trajectory. Twitch is doing fantastic, YouTube we've hit 100 subscribers and actually beyond that now. Instagram is growing nicely as well. And our Discord server has got over 100 people in it, which are all active and super chatty, which makes me so happy. So for me, it's just a case of continuing what we're doing. Eventually, I would like to add more time for streaming and more time for putting up more regular content in terms of videos to the channel. But as always, that all relies on time. But fingers crossed I'll have a little bit more free time this year, as last year was a little bit manic. I'd also love to hear from you. What is it you'd like to see on the channel this year? Do you have any tips for people within the community on setting their own hobby goals? And what are your goals? What goals do you have this year in terms of hobby or just in terms of generally anything? I'd love to hear from you. Please put it in the comments below. If you haven't done so already, please check out our other social medias. We do our hobby hangouts and gaming nights over on Twitch, as well as you can chat with us offline in our Discord. Plus, if you ever want to see pictures of the miniatures, feel free to check out either Instagram or my Ko-fi page. And feel free to send me any tweets and keep up to date with our schedule over on Twitter. But for now, if you did enjoy this video, please hit that subscribe and notification bell, as it massively helps us out. And the last thing to say here is stay safe, stay positive, and no matter what your hobby is, be an ambassador for it. Thank you very much, folks, for watching. Goodbye.